Good morning, my creative lovelies, and welcome to Painting in Your PJs live with Minette. I am Dr. Minette Riordan, and I go live about 3 times a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 a.m. Mountain, and oftentimes on Wednesday evenings. This week I will be live in the mornings for the next few days as I finish up our Write, Paint, Reflect 21 Days of Intuitive Art Journal that I've been creating all month long in December using the creative prompts from our 118 creative self-reflection prompts. And these prompts have been so juicy and have really caught me by surprise. I also found these little words floating on my desk that I think really want to be on the cover of the journal. I've really enjoyed working in the circle format, and this book was the circle format was inspired by the artist Tiffany Simply Sharp on Instagram and a new course that she put out last year that was just fabulous. All right, I'm going to get those words on there. I still don't feel like the cover is quite finished, but it is coming along. And good morning, Yvonne. And I'm pleased with how this journal is turning out. And I want to wish those of you who celebrate Christmas a Merry Christmas. I hope you enjoyed a lovely Christmas weekend. And for those of you that celebrate other holidays, to wish you a happy holidays as well as we go into this very last week of the year. And I'm just going to do a quick flip through of where we are so far. So today is day 18 of our 21 days of intuitive art and creative self-reflection. And I ended up loving this little pull-out. And each of the pages has maybe just a few little words on them that will help me remember what the reflection of this page was. And on day 21, I'm going to get this book finished and put together. So day 21, I will have some fun binding it all together. I've never done this where I've worked in pages and then done the binding at the end. So really having fun with all of these spreads. Some of them I've already added the wax linen thread to for the binding. And I'm just tickled. And I don't always feel that way about my art. I don't know about you, but when you flip back through journals, do you love looking through your journals? A lot of times I just kind of put them away. Like I thought about going through my journals from this year and pulling out a stack to see the work that I've done. And some of the journals that I didn't love, I threw away. I'm very good at throwing away my own art. But I've had more fun with this one. There's definitely some things to be finished. There's our wonderful Jane Goodall. Some of these, as I look through, maybe don't even feel quite finished yet, and there's still some pages to get finished, which is a great metaphor for sitting here at the end of the year as we go into the last month of December. And you can see where I have written on pages and painted over them and done a lot of journaling. And I love this process of write, paint, reflect. And I want you to think about what's your own process for self-discovery. So painting in your PJs with Minette is all about creative self-discovery, using art as a creative practice for self-discovery and personal growth, and how we can get below the surface of our thinking to really understand subconsciously what's going on with us. And as we go into this very last week of the year, I'm starting to cast my gaze forward. So for most of the month, I spent a lot of time really thinking about what happened this past year. What do I want to celebrate? What do I want to leave behind? What's worked? What hasn't worked? And so a lot of really curious questions and inner considerations. and really loved this one. This one was about comfort and what helps me get out of my comfort zone. And as I start to gaze my vision forward and think about, what do I want more of? It's so easy to, these are fun little, there's all kinds of little scrappy bits sitting around on my desk. As I start to shift my gaze and think about what do I want to create this year, it's easy to get caught up in selfishness and all the things that I want or the things that I need or the ways that I think that I need to improve. And as I was flipping through our book of 118 self-reflection prompts, which have inspired this Write, Paint, Reflect method all month long, one of the prompts was about what cause do you support vociferously and why? And it's a funny word, vociferously. And the first thing that popped into my head was literacy, because literacy is something that has always been a cause that's very near and dear to my heart, because I believe that when we can read and write, then we have control and choice over our lives. So many things happen to people when they are asked to sign a document that maybe is not in their best interest, but they can't read it. Or I think about growing up in South Texas, where so much of the population was Spanish speaking, and the parents couldn't always read the things that were being sent home from the school. I love those little purple flowers there. And so I thought about literacy as one of those causes that has always been important to me and that I put, energy and focus into. And then I started to think about, well, is that still what matters to me most in my life right now? And where is my energy and my focus? And my energy and focus and my commitment at this stage of my life is really about supporting others on their creative journey, because I believe that when we're all working in our highest and best creativity, that we can solve all the world's problems, but that we've been taught that creativity is only about making art, when the true definition of creativity has more to do with problem solving and innovation. And because of the Industrial Revolution, we were often taught to memorize things by rote. We were taught to, really loving these two little boys here, we were taught to do what the teacher said. We weren't taught to think creatively, and so people have lost the capacity for creative thinking and innovation. And studies have been done where companies are showing that creativity is the number one skill that people think is needed for leadership today. And yet our school system doesn't teach kids how to be creative, how to think for themselves. And so when I think about all of this, I realize that where I want to spend my time and get involved and engaged is supporting creative pursuits and creative growth out in the world. And one of the ways that I'm personally committed to doing that this year, so this was a paper bag from a store. It was such a fun paper bag. I love all these different words in here. And one of the things that is coming up for me this year is I'm going to join our local artist guild. And if you would have asked me a few years ago if I thought I even belonged in an artist guild, I would have laughed my head off or said, no way, I'm not that kind of an artist. I don't belong there. And yet what I'm longing for in terms of causes that I support is being really connected. And I'm just laying all these pieces down. I don't know what the story is that it's unfolding. I'm looking in the screen at what I'm creating, and just kind of noticing. These pages feel fun and they kind of cover a lot of the things that I care deeply about. I care about nature. I care about literacy. Reading is one of my passions. Obviously, art making is one of my passions. And so I'm have met with the woman, the young woman who's a amazing artist who is the current president of the local arts guild. And I'm going to join our local arts guild and I'm going to give my time and energy to supporting the arts in my local community. It doesn't mean that I don't support other artists as well, but what it means for me personally is that when I think about the limited amount of time and resources that I have to give, I can't support all the causes as much as I would love to, right? I have limited time, limited financial opportunity to for charitable giving. So I want to give in a way that feels most important and productive for me personally. And so I'm curious for those of you that are listening live or perhaps watching the replay, what are the causes that you care most about? And as you do some planning for the coming year, instead of just thinking about personal causes and resolutions, what are some of the causes or personal goals and resolutions? What are some of the causes outside of you that you want to support in your community or in the world? Another thing that has always been really important to me personally is to connect and commit to local causes and to give my time locally. Other people care deeply about supporting causes that are global around the world. And so when you think about your time and energy, where do you want to put it this year? Where do you want to put it this year? And I think it's really, for me, an important conversation for today, the day after a very joy-filled, laughter-filled, abundant holiday yesterday with lots of wonderful gifts and beautiful food and beautiful family conversations. Didn't quite get that right. I want to get this piece of fabric so it's going to lie underneath that ribbon. Jerry rig it a little bit here. And where I was, the recipient of all that joyful goodness yesterday in the midst of quite a bit of sorrow. So we had quite a few deaths in the recent holidays. So my daughter's partner's grandfather and my son's partner's grandmother. The holidays often seem a surprising time of loss as well. So joy and sorrow commingled in our holiday celebrations. And so all of these thoughts are running through my mind this morning, and so it feels important to think about if creativity is the thing that I want to focus on. How can I do more of that? How can I do more of that here locally? And so I'm going to try and see what happens when I join my local artist guild and see what the opportunity there is to support and give back to my community. When I'm doing intuitive collage this way, I don't spend a lot of time cutting unless it's something like this bird that I really feel like, needs that fussy cutting around the edges, but I do love the way torn paper collage looks. And I'm loving this collage, but it doesn't have the sort of colors of my book in it, so I'm thinking I want to get a little layer of paint in here so that it feels like it's going to marry a little bit better with the book overall, even though all these bright, happy colors are making me happy this morning. I also love just having some of those words underneath still kind of peek through, but it feels like I need a little bit of the blue on here. I've got some of the pinks and even some of those yellows. Also notice how I just create right over the edges of everything without pausing to worry about it as I'm going so that that collage experience doesn't get interrupted. I want to just keep creating and not slow down with that one doesn't need to go on there, with the fussy cutting, right? So just letting all those edges lay over and trim them as I go helps me stay a little bit more in the intuitive process. All right, let's just get a little bit of paint in here. It's a good thing I am almost done with this project, because I'm almost out of the blue paint that I've been using. And these are some old, looks like pages where I have just cleaned off my brush, and they're not quite the same colors as my palette, so I just want to make sure that we get just a little bit of these colors. And I realize that my yellow that I'm using is over on the other table. I love finger painting. All right, where'd my birdie go? So just a tiny little pop of color. Definitely feels like it needs a little bit of the yellow as well, but I'll add that later. And it's been interesting how many birds and butterflies have shown up throughout this book. And again, because I'm working intuitively, I'm just mindful of the different motifs or symbols that appear. I'm not directing the process other than picking the shape of the journal and the palette and a different prompt each day. I don't sit down for these intuitive sessions with any sort of pre-designed idea of what I want to create. For the most part, there've been a couple of them I'm like, oh, I know I want a house, or I know I want a self-portrait, but that's still all I know. And so I think the more we can practice just sitting down and putting color on the page, then the more we connect to that intuitive element. So now I'm looking at this and it's like, okay, that ended up getting very busy, and I think I'm going to want to push that background back quite a bit, but I want it to get completely dry first. So I'm going to come over here and let's get some of these materials down. And so I did a bunch of journaling before I got on camera this morning, and then I'm just creating right over the top of the journaling. I love, this is some beautiful, beautiful rice paper from an accounting book in, I believe it was Chinese characters, and a dear friend in Galita gifted me some pages from a whole book of these beautiful papers that she got. It's on this very thin rice paper. It's quite magical, and all those gorgeous characters. are so beautiful for collage. And then I also think about, the work and care and attention that went into that. And I like that I've got this black and white marks here, and I've got some black and white marks here, and some black and white marks here, so things begin to kind of marry together across these spreads, which is making me happy, even though, when I actually put the book together, this is a front and back, I'm not going to see them together, but it's still fun to create them side by side because there's some symmetry in this story here. I think I want a little bit of these stripy marks on here as well. So these are marks that were made on some cheesecloth. It was a really fun project. My friend Mary Correa has a video on her YouTube channel, Correa, Mary Correa Studios, showing how to create your own fabric like this. All right. So all of a sudden it feels like in the act of creating this page, even in the act of creating this channel overall, that I am sharing my commitment to creativity and the value and benefit of creativity. So the whole thing is a connection with this cause that I do care so deeply about, and that I also want to get a little bit of this commitment to the writing arts as well. So this one is super, super simple, which feels like a little bit, it feels good to have that little bit of simplicity with the complexity over here, but I think I want some little pops of this green to just tuck in around some of these edges as well, because I do think that when we're connected to our creativity, it inspires a lot of growth. And I love these two smiling little boys who, in the article, they're at the Kids Discovery Museum, which I think is so important to do whatever we can do to stoke our children's imaginations at any age. All right, feels like it needs a little bit more green. So remember how we've talked about before on this channel, when you're thinking about color, right now with the green in these two places, it pulls my eyes away from the center image because that green is stark against the neutrality of the other colors. There's a little bit of green in the shoes, but there's not a flow. When I look over here, and I've got this green all around the edge of this piece, there's this nice flow that kind of mimics the roundness of our page here. And so I'm wondering if maybe what I want is just to have a little bit more green on here. And that feels just a little bit better. And maybe have that leaf go up that way. I think what I'm missing are the flowers. Okay, maybe I'm just going to have the green leaf and that's it, that it's too much green, or maybe I'm going to paint some green on the background. Let's see. All right. And I'm just using glue stick today because I'm not doing that much paint. Glue stick goes fast. If I were going to want to add a layer of paint, and I know I'm going to want to add some more paint over here. I'm probably going to add a little bit of matte medium over the top of the images as well. Kind of seal that background in. And I'm kind of liking all of this down here, but I didn't love the fingerprint. So I think that's where I want a little calmness above and around the bird, but I like all the growth and movement over here. And writing and talking and thinking about what we want to create for the coming year is such a valuable use of our time. And I know so many people resist setting New Year's resolutions or making goals because so often we set our things up for failure because we create things that are too big. And we don't know, we get overwhelmed. I'm going to finally lose weight. I'm finally going to join the gym. I'm finally going to write that book. And we have this long list of to-dos, many of which are shoulds, as opposed to really thinking about how do I want to live this year and how do I want to feel? And what are the goals that I can set that are in the interest of helping support how I want to feel? When I think about what causes I want to support going into the new year, that's part of, well, I want to feel connected to my community. I want to feel like I'm doing good work in the world. And I can't do that just sitting at home in my basement all by myself. So I want to look for some of the things outside of me, some ways that I can create and connect. We're still pretty new here. We've only been here a year and a half. All right, that green feels like it's part of the growth. Good morning, Leslie. Great to see you. You're up and about early this morning, my friend. And we had an absolutely wonderful Christmas. I hope you had a lovely time off as well. I'm getting down to the little fussy bits here. So it's interesting that I'm talking about, what do I want to create for the coming year and what are the causes that I'm committed to. Good morning, good morning. And there was a little calendar page on the back side of this piece of green here, which is kind of interesting since I'm thinking about what do I want to create next year? What does that look like? What local communities am I giving time and energy and support to? It feels like a little calendar bit is a meaningful element. And I love when that fortuitously happens when I turn over a collage bit and find something perfect on the other side. So welcome to those that are just joining us live or catching the replay. Our topic today is, what are the causes that are most important to you? And how will you support those causes going into the new year? We often think about planning through the lens of the things that we want for ourselves, the things that we want to create, or the things that we want to have. And I think it's equally valuable to think about what are the causes that I want to support. So when we learn to give generously, we feel better about ourselves, about the world, and yet there are so many causes that need our attention and our time and our energy. How do we decide? And I think we decide by getting really clear about what are the causes that are nearest and dearest to our heart. And so for me personally, the two that are nearest and dearest to my heart are literacy. I believe that, and especially adult literacy, I love the fun and imaginative look of these kids, and I love the books here, but I think it's essential that everyone knows how to read and write, because when we know how to read and write, we have choice. And when we know how to read and write, we can access our creativity, which is the other cause that is most important to me, is nurturing people's creativity and reminding them that they are creative and that creativity really has nothing to do with how well you can draw. Just going to push some of this back to the background a little bit, and this one actually came together really quickly. I did do a bunch of writing before I started about this idea of what are the causes that are most important to me. And I want my little birdie to stand out a little bit more, so I'm just, bringing a little bit of white in here. Again, paying attention to imagery and motif and symbols that are showing up repeatedly. And I kind of like that it almost looks like the bird is sitting in a bit of a messy nest here. And I took a beautiful photograph of a nest I found on my walk the other day. And I'm kind of thinking, I'm wondering if I want to print out a picture of that nest and add it to this page. And I'm going to push some of this back as well. I'm feeling I want our little boys here to kind of be the center of the story. And even though I love all these papers, they're not quite the palette. Okay, that's kind of interesting to just have the focus be on the books and the kiddos. So I feel like there's a story unfolding here, and this feels like one of those pages that just needs to sit for a while. That feels like there's an emerging story about the causes that I care about, and I feel like I want the word. I might have to print it out or see if I can find. There needs to be something about creativity on here as that thing that's most important. And I have a couple of boxes full of words around. Well, that one's kind of appropriate. Awakening our sacred gifts. Not in the wild. All right. I love all these little tiny bits and pieces. So confirm your life path feels like a good one when we start to think about causes that we care about. I want those causes to really flow from and support the work that I'm doing in the world. Another little bird. And sometimes just trusting the words that you have in front of you, it's easy to want to be like super intentional, and it doesn't always have to be. So I'm curious, what are the causes that other people care deeply about and that you commit your time, energy, and resources to? What are the causes that you care about? And as you look ahead, that you're planning to really commit time and energy to in the new year. Feel like these need a little bit more yellow on them. Good morning, Kim. So today is day 18, so I have a few more days left of this project, and the last day I will focus on putting the whole book together, which is going to be exciting to finally see it all come together. And how I go through a book and put the finishing touches on it as well. And it feels like when I think about causes, it's this idea of, where do I want to shine my light? Where do I want to shine my light this year? I think maybe is one way to think about this idea of the causes that I support. Where do I want to put my energy, my focus? I just love those two little smiley faces are so sweet. And what I'm noticing is that, these aren't the pretty fancy pages. And sometimes the pages, I don't find them aesthetically pleasing, but oftentimes those are the ones that are the most meaningful. So as I think about where am I putting my time and energy, what are the causes I'm going to support in the coming year? Because I have to plan for that, because otherwise it's so easy to just stay in my comfort zone, like we talked about a few days ago, sit at home in my happy little studio. And if I'm committed to getting involved and engaged in my community, then I have to plan for it. It doesn't happen, right? Doesn't happen. I have to stretch outside of my comfort zone, put dates in the calendar, right? And plan for the ways that I want to contribute. I feel like this just has too much white around this little book here. Now they feel better, feels more like there's a story here, right? So I think on here I want to add back some of the words about how literacy is important to me, and over here some words about how committed I am to the cause of helping others connect to their creativity, that it needs a little bit of writing on here to kind of recenter and refocus and remind me what the story's about. And again, remembering that to look at the pages independent of each other, because once the book's put together, this is how they're going to look. And it really changes the story and the feel of the pages when I look at them independently as well. And I'm actually pretty happy with this one. The yellow was just what it needed. and it's good for now. This one doesn't feel complete, and I think it needs to just sit for a little while. They tell a different story when I look at them side by side and independently. This is the reflect part of the write, paint, reflect practice. So, really sitting with our art and letting the story emerge. We don't need to know the story ahead of time. The story will reveal itself to us, not always right in the moment. Sometimes it takes a little time for that story to unfold. Yeah, so this one doesn't feel complete, so I'm going to sit with that one for a little while. But this one does feel a little busy, but also I think reflects this idea of committing to the cause of creativity, which is one of the causes that I care most about. And I think that's going to be it for today. As always, thank you for joining me live. Thank you for watching the replay. I so appreciate each and every one of you. I will be back tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Mountain Time. It's my kiddo's last evening in town, so I won't be here in the evening, and but I will be here in the morning for day 19 of our 21 days of intuitive art. And I'm going to go sit and reflect on this one a little bit and see what else is useful. So appreciate all of you. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day. I have nothing else that I have to do today, nowhere I have to be, and I'm looking forward. I did a lot of cooking over the last few days, so I'm really looking forward to some downtime to relax and play with some of my Christmas gifts. So have a beautiful rest of your day, everyone, and I'll see you all live tomorrow. Bye-bye.